Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alien vs. Predator Galaxy podcast, the original Alien and Predator podcast. This is episode 120, and I'm regular host Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks, and joining me are usual partners in crime,
Adam Zeller, aka RidgeTop. Hey, everyone.
David Bischoff, Voodoo Magic. Happy holidays, everyone.
And, well, yes, AJ's just spoiled it. This is Christmas time. This is December. And this is our last episode of the year. So regulars know that we are going to be nattering about something Alien versus Predator. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, AJ's completely freaking spoiled it because he's got it in front of his microphone telling everybody what we're going to be talking about. And, well, I say that like people haven't seen the link or the title of the podcast or seen the picture on Spotify or whatever. But yes, we are talking Aliens versus Predator Hunter's Planet.
Oh, your UK version looks a little different, Aaron.
Yeah, I've got the Millennium version.
It's red and gold, and ours is like blue and silver.
Mm-hmm. With the John Bolton artwork, I think it is, on the front.
It's nice artwork. It's good cover art. I miss the old Alien, Predator, and AVP cover art. They had some good ones back in the day.
Well, they used to get the good guys on it. You know, they had Dorman on it. Dorman did several. John Bolton did several. So, you know, they put the effort in it back then.
Sorry, Voodoo, you were going to say?
And it wouldn't be me if I didn't try to work in some sort of Predator 2 reference. But the artwork also features the aesthetics of the Lost Predator ship.
It certainly does. Because that was the one we had when this came out. That was the only point of reference. And I think Bolton also did the artwork for Predator Cold War's novel cover, and that also had the interior of a Predator spaceship with the P2 aesthetic, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, I think so.
This was the sequel to AVP Prey, which was the first AVP novel and adapted the first AVP comic by Dark Horse. And so this came out before War's novel adaptation, right? The date I'm seeing on the book is 1994.
There are some overlap, which I'm just going to check.
Yeah, and I'm going to need you guys to explain this to me because I really don't understand the timeline. Now, it's been a while since I frequented War. I never read the novelization, but I did read, the comic series. And Shorty was in War, and Shorty was killed in War, if I remember correctly. Yet Shorty's in, I'm not going to spoil anything, I hope, because everyone who's listening to this already read it. I mean, Shorty is also killed in this novelization, in this story.
So, in Hunter's Planet was published in 94, correct? However, War was published in 95, but War also includes issue 0, which is that cool one with Machiko and the clan assaulting a predator, an alien boob hive. And that is adapted in this because issue 0 was released in parts in 1992.
But didn't Machiko betray the predators in War? Yes. And yet it's referenced in this novelization that she has already betrayed them.
Yes. So
although that wasn't the same planet, right? It's not the same planet listed in War.
Hang on, because I took notes.
It's really like these stories are intertwined in a way, and they keep.
Yeah, I mean, you almost feel like War is the prequel to this.
Yeah,
and this is the third book in the series, but there's
just some minor inconsistencies. So it feels like to me that David Bischoff, the author, had at least talked to perhaps Randy Stradley or Dark Horse, because it makes reference to her betraying the Predators to save some miners on a planet. And I think that he just had an inkling of where they were intending to go with War, but they only actually had the issue 0. So, hang on, where is it?
So maybe he had intended this to be a sequel of War, but just didn't know all the specifics of that story yet.
Yes.
By the way, I'm going to be calling him David Bischoff because it's the same last name I have, and that's the way we pronounce it over here. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. You know what? It's not in my notes. I'm sure they referenced the planet's name in here, and it wasn't Buddha from War. It was something different, but I'm sure it was.
Planet was different, from War. Yeah. I remember that.
So I think it was just a little, because War itself, the actual run took so long to crack off. I think he just didn't know about Shorty's death, and it was actually intended to take place after War because it takes place after a similar event. There's just that one. That is the more noticeable inconsistency, is the fact that Shorty's alive. So I think we can call this number 3. If anything, it's perhaps an alternate sequel to 3 World War.
Yeah. Okay.
That I had it in my memory for ages because that this was an alternate take to War. That's how I'd always thought about it. But I've only read this once. So
I wonder why they didn't just wait for War, though. If Bantam, if Prey was really successful for them, they just wanted to get out a sequel quickly, and they didn't want to wait for Dark Horse, or what the deal was with that.
No idea. I don't think Bischoff, yeah. Bischoff has a social presence. So I had intended to try and ask him, but
it's actually a German name. So my father.
I don't think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's right. I was just saying my father was born in Germany, and he came over from Berlin, and lots of Bischoffs over there, including Bischoff beer. So, but go ahead.
I also happen to have a German last name myself.
Is it really?
Yeah, Zeller is German.
Okay.
I think it's steward of the wine cellar in German, which
mine's
okay.
How appropriate.
He says holding his glass of alcohol.
Yeah, Percival is a pretty common British last name, is it not?
It's French. Yeah, it's French. However, Percival was a knight of King Arthur's Round Table.
Oh, so not far from that.
So, I like to say it's the King Arthur's one and not.
So while you gentlemen had prior experience with this novel, this was my first time reading it. So I was going in cold. And, and I don't know if we're going to start getting into our reactions.
Yeah, why don't you give us your impressions first, since you read it fresh for the first time? Aaron and I had both read it before.
Okay. Aliens versus Predator Hunter's Planet. I'm just going to sigh for a second.
Oh, I can tell where this is going already.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you gentlemen ever, I'm sure you've read a junior novelization, right? A junior novel. Those novels written for that preteen era. That was,
come on. It's not that.
Oh, hang on. Oh,
well, yes. Did you read Prey before you read? You haven't? Oh, okay.
No, I've read all the comics that surround Machiko, but not the novelization. So this was my first time, dabbling into that. But for me, this felt like, for anyone who doesn't know, a junior novel is written for that preteen era that is more adult than your children's fare, but not enough substance to entertain, a true adult. And to me, the way my mind works, this encapsulates Alien vs. Predator Hunter's Planet for me. I mean, everything from the paper-thin characters and dialogue, that the dialogue is just totally unrealistic, to the overused literary trope of that rich corporate mogul revealing himself to be an evil, twirling mustache villain. Right in the beginning of this novel, the warning signs for me were there when that group of predators approached that still alien xenomorph on an alien planet. And for the author, the moment of tension was there. It was there to grab. But when that xenomorph spins around brandishing a weapon, it was a big red flag for me. I think the idea would be wild in my adolescent mind. something to inspire oohs and ahs, to all my friends. If I sketched this scene out in my, in my middle school notebook, but I don't know, as an adult, even being a fan of these otherworldly creatures, the moment was just a big, ridiculous eye roll for me. And so ultimately it was a difficult read, difficult to find enjoyment, difficult to pay attention, and frustrating on the alien side, because one would think if you pick up a book titled Alien versus Predator, you'd think aliens would be featured more than they were in this book, better represented than they were. So this book was disappointing to me. Boring is what I'd say. Written by someone with the last name as me, Bischoff. Come on, Derek, you got to represent. But he didn't, not to me. So as a reader, I checked out. I didn't have a good time with this book. Total checkout.
Okay, so numbered score.
Oh, we're not gonna wait to the end.
No, we never tend to.
Sometimes
really.
we do.
Well, that's fine.
But yeah, let's right off the bat. Let's just give our little mini reviews first.
All right. 3 out of 10.
Oof.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rough.
Yeah.
Adam.
So I had initially read this in my late teen years. And I remember really enjoying it when I was younger. This was after I had read Prey. And I had really liked Prey at the time. Coming back to this, it did sour on me a bit. I felt like the writing went into tangents way too much. Like you would be establishing a scene, and then characters in the scene would like go back and think of like previous things they had done, and then would be like jolted back to the scene. And it was just a bit kind of all over the place in terms of writing style. I thought it wasn't like a smooth read. It was kind of a jumbled read for me, honestly. I don't know if you guys got that impression. Did you?
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't want to step over your impression, but I do want to get into the writing style. I had a real difficult time, real confusing time with the way Derek wrote this book. So yeah, definitely. David. Did I say Derek? Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. My brother's name is Derek, so I'm just gonna keep. If you guys hear Derek, I mean David.
I mean, there were things about this book that I enjoyed, and it was kind of interesting to see. And there will be spoilers here, as there typically are in these kind of podcasts. The book has dinosaurs in it, and
Florida.
Yeah, so there's a scene in the book where all these predators are hunting a T-Rex that has been genetically recreated, and of course my teenage reader sensibilities was very much excited by this prospect. I remember when I was younger, I wrote like Alien versus Predator versus Jurassic Park fan fiction, and so this was pretty exciting from someone who was also a big fan of that franchise at the time. But yeah, going back to it, I did not enjoy it as much. There were things that I really liked about it, and other things that it kind of went over the top with. I thought the first half of the book was definitely stronger. It was interesting when what was his name again? Livermore Evanston kind of struck that deal with Machiko Noguchi and took her and her android companion Attila onto their ship, and it was a very like classy spaceship, which is something we haven't seen a lot of in the Alien universe, and it's something I do like it being explored, which also was kind of shown in the recent comic we read, AVP Thicker Than Blood. So the whole posh spaceship idea I liked, kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen the videos of that game that's never going to be finished, Star Citizen, where they pretty much just take everyone's money for these really expensive looking spaceships. But the spaceships look really damn nice in that game. And it kind of reminded me of of that. Just a library on a spaceship was really cool. And then the descriptions of the planet being very idyllic and this kind of Hunter's Preserve game planet, which is interesting kind of in retrospect now that we've seen that with Predators, the movie in 2010. Like the Predators have their game planets, and you have your wealthy megalomaniac here that is trying to run his game preserve planet, but as we discover, he has more sinister motives at play. But not getting into the story too much just yet, to kind of conclude my thoughts. Yeah, it was okay. It was entertaining. I just felt the writing style did not make for an easy read. I do think Machiko was a fun character here, and the kind of banter she had back and forth with her android Attila was fun at times. But the other characters felt pretty shallow, I would say. The Predators, I'm starting to get on your side, Aaron, with the whole space samurai thing. Like going back and reading these books, like the Perry books and this book, at least the Perry AVP books, I think pushed that a bit too hard, or maybe really too hard. Because we know the Predators are prideful and that gets the best of them, but the whole they must walk the path kind of thing in this, it just gets a bit too much. I think
it's so Klingon, so vibe.
Yeah. For me, it's probably a 6, maybe a 5.
Okay, so likewise with Adam, I read this in my late teens. I've just worked out from the date of my review that I was 17 when I read this one. And that is one of the earliest reviews on the website. It will be revamped soon because the old stuff is awful, always awful. But I hated this book when I was 17. I gave it 2 out of 5 on the review. How did I sum it up here? Having loved Bischoff's Alien Genocide, I was really disappointed in this novel. It had some brilliant ideas, such as the Xenoborg, but manages to ruin that with bad pacing, continuity foul-ups, and the very, very stupid character of Attila. Now this is interesting because I've completely changed on some of this. I did enjoy the last half, though, even though the novel lacked the aliens. It was worth the initial read, and I'm glad I got it, but it isn't something I'd read again. So, yeah, it's taken me 13, 14 years to revisit this book because in my head, all I had was this awful impression of it being a bag of crap. And it's funny because like I just read, Bischoff wrote Aliens Genocide, the novelization of that book, which is one I really, really love. It's been a few years since I've read that one as well, but that's one I've good memories of. And I always liked that one because I found the novel version more of a character study of Grant, and it went into him a lot more than the comic does, as so do the novelizations do. But yeah, I really like that one. So for this one to be a dud was disappointing to me. Now, I slagged off Attila in that review. I absolutely loved Attila while I was reading this time. He was so much fun to me.
He was entertaining at times, but I would not say that I loved his character.
I loved him. He reminded me of David, he did, and I love David. And there's just something about this cheeky android and the whole dynamic that's not quite android. I know if Eric was on, he'd be complaining about it not being, properly representative of artificial intelligence. But that's the reason I like sarky, sarcastic robots. So Attila, I really loved in this. And I think that was really my main carry through for this. There's lots of little elements that I did enjoy. The idea of the Hunter's Planet, the idea of the genetically, as much as I hate generally genetically engineered storylines now, the idea of creating a Jurassic Park for hunters was interesting to me. The Xenoborgs is we're gonna call them Xenoborgs. The book calls them buggers.
The buggers,
which is awful as a name. Adam and I go for Xenoborgs since it's moderately related to the Xenoborgs from AVP Classic, because they were cybernetically enhanced aliens like they are in this. Although this muddles it all up because it talks about genetics, it talks about all sorts of different cybernetic. It all.
It kind of reminded me of a recent piece of fan art that I just sent you guys in the chat here.
Yeah, I had the very same mental image.
It's like Xenomorphs being taken control. It was done by Merrick Ocon, I think.
It's the one that everybody thought was to do with Alien 5.
Right.
Alien 5.
Right, yeah.
Look, I'm going to continue calling these the buggers throughout the podcast. It's a reminder of the writing choices made in this book. I don't want to make this sound better, because every time you read the name buggers, you're going to cringe.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Aaron.
This, I didn't hate it as much as I remembered hating it, but I was disappointed by it. I listened to a Spider-Man podcast, and there's a very grouchy old dude on that, and he always has a comment about the issues that he's indifferent about, and it's that he didn't find them personally offensive. This book, I did not find personally offensive, but it was so middling, and it's all a part of that bad sequelitis. You know, I've gone on to read Forever Midnight. I've gone on to read Steel Egg and DNA War. So it didn't feel as bad to me as some of the other stuff that's come out since. So
I remember really liking DNA War, but I got to go back and read some of the others. And see
you also really remembered liking this one.
I did, and it soured on me, unfortunately. Maybe DNA War will as well. But.
And Adam, you said that was through your teenage years. So that's, I would imagine a teenager, I mean, not to anyone who enjoys this, but just from my perspective, it's not enough for an adult. I can't get in that teenage mindset to just love this, but I can imagine teenagers going crazy over this story. Young teenagers.
I'm not so sure, but and you said about the idea of an alien with a gun being the thing that would have flipped a teenage.
I mean, we got Jerry from the.
We've got Jerry, and Jerry still rocks, regardless of what anybody says. Jerry, Drew, I know you're probably not listening to this, Drew, but if you ever do, Jerry rocks.
All right.
I like synthetics that aren't normal synthetics. So for me,
before we get into everything, what's your score, Aaron?
4 or 5 out of 10.
Okay.
It was just,
It's still
it's poor. I didn't hate it as much as I remembered hating it. It was there. Again, I probably would not read this until 10 more years down the line. I forget we've done this episode, and I go, all right, let's do an episode on Hunter's Planet.
And we really don't have a lot of AVP novels. We got these 3 in the 90s. And then we had the Rage War trilogy a lot more recently.
That's it.
Which only one of those was branded as AVP, even though it was an AVP trilogy.
The whole event is AVP, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I saw in one of the recent books, they said AVP Armageddon. Is that coming?
That is the last book from Rage War.
Oh. Well, maybe I'm thinking of something else, because I could have sworn in one of the more recent books we got, there was another AVP upcoming.
No.
Maybe not. No. Okay.
And so yeah, that's all we've got is these 3 old ones from the 90s from Bantam/Millennium if you're in the UK.
Rage War.
And then the Rage War, yeah.
So let's talk about David Bischoff, the writer. I mean, Adam brought up the writing and his difficulty with it, and I have to agree wholeheartedly.
Well, before we get on to that bit, because I kind of want to be a bit more inclusive for the people that haven't read the book and still want to listen. So if Adam could walk us through the plot of this.
So this takes place a couple years after the original story, if you've read either the original Dark Horse comic for AVP or the adaptation of that, which was Steve Perry's AVP Prey, in which Machiko Noguchi was one of the heads of this colony rancher operation that was infested by aliens, and predators show up. And so we won't go fully into that, but long story short, Machiko's one of the few survivors. She survives by partnering up with a predator known as Broken Tusk or Dachande, and he is killed at the end, but before he is killed, he bloods her, and so she is recognized as a blooded warrior among the predators. And after she lives on her own on the planet for a while, another predator group shows up, and she decides to roll with them as a hunter for a few years. And so the book goes into that a little bit in terms of her and the kind of cultural divide between her and the predators, but she still gets a thrill about living with them on their ship and hunting with them. But eventually, just like in the, I guess we're calling it alternate story war, there comes a point where she has to choose between saving other humans or going with the predators, as the predators have decided to hunt humans in a specific instance, and she doesn't want to kill her own. So the predator that has always given her trouble, whose nickname is Shorty, I'm not going to try and pronounce his predator name in this book. So she, I guess, betrays him and then goes off on her own again and is set up on a... what's the planet, Aaron? Is it like a mining planet?
Sorry, I've myself muted there. I don't think it really talks about it too much. I think it's some sort of mining world, perhaps. Right. It was one of those sort of skip it kind of moment details.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's in another administrative position now.
She's bored.
She's bored. She's doing office work. She has an android named Attila, who she purchased, which they specify is not typical for individuals to own androids, which you wouldn't think by some of the viral marketing for Covenant now. But in the framing of this book, it was not too common. But she essentially has him as a sparring partner and assistant. And it's specified that he's more mechanical than androids typically are in the alien universe, with the white blood and all that, whereas he has like a holographic thing that comes out of his forehead, and he can look like a samurai warrior to make their sparring more immersive. And he's very cheeky, like you said, Aaron. Always trying to engage her in philosophical conversation. They like to talk about, war a lot. They mentioned the book, The Art of War. And eventually Machiko gets an offer from a wealthy businessman who arrives on this planet on a space yacht. And he says, I know about your past. I know you've dealt with these bugs before. And I'm setting up a game preserve planet, essentially, where really wealthy people in the galaxy come to hunt game. And he says, people haven't really caught wind of this yet at the planet. I need you to come here and help me take care of my bug problem. And so she, I guess, is contracted by the company for a while, and he offers to rid her of her contract.
Right. Just one thing to point out. The book always refers to it as the company, which in alien parlance you normally tend to think means Weyland-Yutani, yeah. But it is Chigusa.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It says it on the back for a start of the book, but that's the company that she always worked for.
Right. So she agrees to at least see what's going on, because it seems like a pretty enticing deal. He kind of coaxes her out by saying if she's not, on board with it within a few weeks, then she still makes a bunch of money and she can leave. And so she and her android take a journey on this really classy space yacht that he has and go to his hunter's planet, as it were, where he has a small colony set up, kind of like a hunting lodge. And we see there are these other humans already there, so the story kind of jumps there, and they are trying to hunt this crazy alien animal that's kind of like a feline, six-limbed animal. What do they called it? Like a Zangoid or something?
Something like that.
Yeah. But it chest bursts, and then predators show up and take out this hunting party. And this is, I think, before they arrive still. And one of them's like this lawyer guy. So there's a lot of like posh, pompous assholery in this book. And then, so after Machiko, her android, well, on the way there, they visit the library on this space yacht, and they find a hidden room in the library that has all these war artifacts. And among them are some predator artifacts, and they don't really know what to make of it at the time. And then they arrive to the planet. They are given a tour by, I guess, their concierge. Again, it's hard to remember all the characters' names in this book because they really were not that memorable.
One of the notes that I had was how friggin' stupid everybody's names were in this book. It was incredibly daft.
They totally went a little far on the pompous, like nature of these characters. Just how they talked, how snooty they always sounded. Like, oh yes, indeed. Shall we have some fine cognac as we tour the facility? Like, it was just like, oh my god, at sometimes. Anyway, so this lawyer who his associate was face hugged while they were on this expedition. He was the only guy who survived. And this world is kind of outside of the bounds of the laws of the corporations or governments. And so this industrialist owns this planet himself, Livermore Evanston. And so he has his concierge, I guess, or whoever this guy is, take Machiko and her android for a tour of the small colony. And they talk about how idyllic the planet is in terms of its environment, like, beautiful waterfalls and plains, and it's just a really nice looking world. But this lawyer arrives, pulls up in like a sports car, and is all panicked and goes off to talk to Evanston about what happened on their ill-fated hunting excursion. And there's this scene in the book, which I will give credit for, that's pretty messed up, where they go to a park in the colony, and there's all these like nice ducks and swans, and they see a bunch of these hunters come out and like feed the ducks, and then they all just blast the ducks. And he's like, oh, don't worry, we'll just clone them all again. I'm like, wow, just people who really get off on killing come here, I guess. So they take Machiko back to her quarters to get settled. And then some of the mercenaries show up with beer kegs to introduce themselves, I guess. And she quickly establishes that she's not one to be messed with. But after that little conflict passes, they do have some civil conversation about, hey, do you know what's really going on here, kind of thing. And so the next day, they take a hover vehicle out to kind of survey the land, and that's when they come across the scene of all these predators fighting a T-Rex. So it also establishes before this that there are predators on this planet. Their leader is killed by what they think is a xenomorph, but the xenomorph ends up being armed, and so they discover it's like a cyborg xenomorph. And Shorty, one of the underling predators, assumes command after their leader is killed by one of these Xenoborgs, as Aaron and I like to call them. And so after surveying the land, she finds them taking down a T-Rex, lands the vehicle, and then a predator attacks her. But before it can take her out, her android Attila assumes control of the VTOL craft and essentially blows the predator to bits and rescues her. They go back to talk to Evanston again, which I guess they do let on, yes, we know you kind of had a history with these creatures and with these hunters, and we don't know what to do about them, and that's part of the reason why we had you here as well. But they do hint like, oh no, they're not the reason the bugs are here, but I don't think they really go into it. Also, during the tour that they took Machiko and Attila on, she was really curious about the cloning facility which they were kind of like, oh, well, we don't know if we can show you that yet. But Evanston does say, oh, yes, we'll give you a tour and show you what's going on there. After she's like, I saw a dinosaur, like you must have this crazy facility, and that's maybe why the predators are here, because they want to hunt the creatures that you're engineering. So before they can give her a tour, the lawyer guy is taking them to survey the area where the rest of his hunting party was killed and see what happened to his partner who was face hugged. They find her. She is chest bursted, and then they are
not quite. So they find her unconscious. She's like everybody else has died. They find, I think, the remains of one of the Xenoborgs. And it's like a curiosity because there's evidence of Attila, like, detects evidence of plastics and ceramics and metal and stuff, as well as like the alien's body. And they find the lawyer's partner in a bush somewhere, completely left alone, no memory of what happens after she falls down. And then they take her back, and you then eventually discover, they leave a couple of hints, but then she births in front of everybody.
And at that point, they're kind of more focused on getting the situation under control. But Machiko and Attila are still pretty focused on seeing what exactly is going on in this cloning facility. So at night, they decide to sneak in, and they find out he is producing these xenomorph cyborgs.
So once Machiko and Attila figure out what's happening, they try and leg it from the cloning facility, but they get caught. And this is when the novel seems to actually sort of kick into gear. I think this is about 200 pages into the book before it happens, and it's a 250-page book. Or maybe a little bit beforehand, maybe 180 pages. They try and escape, and they get chased by the security guards. Attila gets in true alien fashion, gets his head blown off his body. So she spends the rest of the book carrying him round by his head. And Machiko then decides to try and team up, or try and convince the predators that it is a bad idea to let Evanston make Xenoborgs, and she tries to parlay them, basically. She has to get into a fight with Shorty because Shorty knows who she is, and he always hated her, at least in terms of war, and at least in terms of issue 0, which I think is about all that Bischoff had to work with this one. So they have a scrap. It looks like he's going to win, but then Attila has some secret weapon. Attila's capabilities are something of a running gag throughout the book. I say gag, a running point throughout the book is to who he was before Machiko got hold of him. As far as she was concerned, he'd been wiped and just had whatever she requested put on, but he had all these hidden capabilities, and that were a point of discussion throughout. And one of them is apparently laser eyes. Maybe not quite Superman laser eyes, but he could shoot lasers somehow. So when it looked like Machiko was going to lose on Shorty, which gave her a moment to then jab him through the face, I think, with a knife or the end of a spear. I can't quite remember the specifics of that one. So she proves her worth, convinces the predators that the Xenoborgs are a bad idea, and to join her in assaulting the cloning facility, basically, to kill them all. And then from that point on, it's basically an assault on the cloning facility. She has to get in touch with the 2 people from her mercenary unit that she got on with and developed bonds with. But we'll talk about that a bit later. But they organize an assault, go for the facility. Everything seems all right. Evanston thinks he's a genius tactician and releases the Xenoborgs. But it's his first test of the Xenoborgs. They're not quite effective. Then somehow he loses control of them, because up to that point, he was like basically remote controlling them. He sat there in a bunker with a joystick. Well, Bischoff doesn't say that, but that's how I imagine it. But something happens that causes the Xenoborgs to break free of their control, and they just leg it. And then Evanston legs it as well. There's a little bit of rushed drama in terms of trying to catch Evanston, but ultimately they corner him on his own spaceship, and get him to basically initiate the self-destruct, I suppose, feature that he had installed in the Xenoborgs, because of course he did. And then the Predators get him, and then basically the novel ends. After that point, it's kind of like, so Machiko, you have your own planet now. What are you going to do? And yeah, there's no real resolution outside of that. The Predators show up with Evanston's head, and it's then we'll deal with those guys tomorrow. Attila's like, can I have my body back? And they're like, we'll try. And then basically, yeah, it ends with Machiko being, the governess of a colony. And
what was the explained motive again of Evanston's army?
AJ unpaused. I assume he wants to deal with this one.
Well, they'd said in the book that his personal motivation was to make this army of modified xenomorphs, quote, remake civilization according to the ideas he knew was correct, end quote.
You'll never stop me, Mr.
Eye roll. Yeah. I want you to die. Yeah. Livermore Evanston, man. What a villain. I mean, how about that mustache twirling Livermore?
Yeah, but why would he even bring her there if he had this hidden master plan?
Well, he wanted her to eventually train this army. So he'd sort of like wanted her to come and help clear up the ones that had already escaped, because a few got out and somehow caused this mess. I don't really understand how they then went on to infect everything else, because there's no mention. Oh, that's another thing. The book ends with we've still got all those other aliens left to go deal with that are out in the wild. We'll deal with them in the next book.
But I think some got out and they started face hugging the animals, and this thing was going to blow up fast. So.
But it was just adults. There's no mention of queens. There's no mention of egg morphing or anything like that. It's just a couple get out and suddenly there's a ton knocking around.
We did see a face hugger, at least one. So even though it's not mentioned, we know there are face huggers coming from eggs somewhere.
But who's laying the eggs, man?
Well, we don't know. It's one of the book's many mysteries. But it was all about, controlling the population, and the xenomorph population, and from ruining his planet. So he was bringing over all these mercenaries and everyone that had experience with exterminating xenomorphs, and Machiko was one of them. So, and he was hoping Machiko would actually lead these group of tough guys, and but back to Evanston. He named he's a funny guy. He named his island continent Livermore Land. Okay, his name is Livermore Evanston. Livermore Land.
He named the continent his first name.
Yes,
and the town his last name.
You're right. Its capital city was Evanstonville. Okay,
not narcissistic at all.
So, but let's stop right there when it just comes to the writing here. I mean, why wouldn't Evanston call his capital city Evanston, not Evanstonville, or call the continent Livermore, not Livermore Land? I mean, when you're dealing maybe with an amusement park, I get it. But
welcome to Livermore Land, my good chum,
and Evanstonville. This is a highly intellectual mogul. Come on, would he really name these places like that? I mean, I couldn't take this villain seriously.
There's a lot in this book to not take seriously.
He seemed very bubbly and megalomaniacal in his personality, which made his megalomaniacal intentions even more unrealistic.
Yeah, as far as characters who have attempted to control the aliens in the past, this guy is the worst. He is the literal worst. I mean, Spears was all manner of interesting. Church was interesting. I mean, I suppose the methods would have been interesting in this had they not just been a wishy-washy of technical words and concepts in this. But he was a con for me. Evermore was. I mean, it was kind of interesting to start with, especially in the bits on the luxury yacht ship, whatever. That sequence I enjoyed where they found Machiko and Attila found like evidence of him knowing about the predators. All that stuff I was kind of into, because the through line of the book is very much this mystery of what's really happening. And that bit I think was fun. The mystery was fun for a good while of this book, at least from my perspective.
There were bits of mystery, and I agree. When it started feeling mysterious, the book was probably at its best, but it really didn't play up that mystery too much, and you can see the villain a mile away. And
it's always the capitalist. It's always the big mogul and the Elon Musk in Alien stuff and Alien versus Predator.
And they were pointing to that lab from the beginning, that there's something mysterious. Why won't he let us show? Why won't he show us that lab? Something's going on in there. But that was presented to us in the prologue, right?
It was very predictable.
Yeah, we already knew that xenomorphs don't traditionally, brandish weapons and start firing, at predators. Where they killed that leader. I'm going to try his name, Natkapu.
Yeah, that was another thing in
Perry
this.
Predator names all over the place.
Yeah,
I don't remember the Perry names having so many apostrophes in them. I mean, at least you had what was it, Deshande and what was Machiko's name? Tichinde, Little Knife? No, that was Dauti, yeah,
or something.
Tichinde was somebody, I'm sure it was. It might have been one of the other youngsters. But yeah, all the apostrophes in the Predator names were ridiculous.
But so you think about the mystery, right? And it's like you learn in the prologue that the butler did it. There's a xenomorph with a gun, and then we're going to play up all this mystery about the lab. Something's going on with the lab. David would have done himself better if he didn't reveal this mystery. Even if they just stumbled upon a predator that was shot and killed, and it wasn't any of these mercenaries, who could have done it? Who else is on this planet? And be mysterious about it. But they showed their hand before the first chapter, and I'm like, David, what are you doing? I don't understand. I mean, the readers already know. Yet we're still playing like this is a big mystery. I mean, Aaron, you were always complaining about, the character, the audience far ahead of the character. And we were so far ahead of Machiko throughout this whole book. And it was kind of frustrating for me to get to it, because we all knew what was happening there. But it took forever. Until the last 40 pages, 50 pages to finally, maybe a little further, but to reveal what Livermore's secret was. And it just wasn't a surprise at all. I would have loved a lot more mystery. I think that would have helped this book.
On the topic of the biolab, can I also just say something? Because I've in my notes that the biolab's introduction was jarring, because prior to them actually getting on the planet, all he'd been talking about was transplanting other species and dropping them on the planet as the game. And then when you get there, it then becomes pretty much all about cloning and genetic manipulation and breeding dinosaurs and ducks and stuff. So that seemed like something that was my phone on the floor. So that seemed like something that was just kind of thought up in the middle of, and they went with it from there.
And they just kind of hand wave away the recreation of dinosaurs too. They're like, well, they can pretty much manufacture DNA so that it can go exactly whatever direction that they want it to.
And you think they would have played up that Tyrannosaurus Rex scene. I mean, once we finally got to see this, you think there would be a big spotlight on this battle and how these predators pretty much tried to hunt this beast and overcome this beast, and how difficult it would have been. But it was like an afterthought. It was just like observing, they're fighting a T-Rex. And
that was it. That was it. Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna throw dinosaurs in there, at least do a little bit more with it.
It did seem like a load of random ideas that were sort of thrown together. and I hate to say this, but again, because of just how much I really enjoyed Genocide, but this one just seemed made up on the fly. It's like, okay, so we've got this multi-legged cat thing that's super awesome. Oh, we've also got dinosaurs. I've thought of that while I were on the bog, and I'll throw that in. Shit, the main mystery. Oh god, that alien with a gun. Yeah, okay, let's circle back round to that.
Yeah, and all these things we've been telling you about how everybody's into war and stuff. Yeah, so he wants to just like use these cyborgs to wage war and have Machiko train them so he can take over worlds and mold humanity in his own image. Like, what?
Yeah, he seemed all over the place, David, and maybe I could segue just a bit into his writing style, because did any of you find it off-putting and confusing like I did? And what I mean is, for example, there were these weird paragraph breaks after single sentences, and then mostly there were sometimes these long stretches of dialogue and conversation back and forth with no indicator of what character was speaking.
Yep.
And a couple times, based on the odd structuring or odd pacing of the dialogue, I was unclear who was saying what, and I actually had to go back and read and try to keep count so I know what characters said what in any given time, any given room. It was so frustrating.
It was a rough read. I've read a number of the recent books that are much better paced and flow better in terms of just the words on the page than this book. This book was a jumbled mess in parts, unfortunately.
So the whole not saying who's saying stuff thing was something I picked up on and had to go back quite a few times as well, because I mean, it's not uncommon in prose, but it's normally when you've got two people and they've got distinct different, voices and personalities, and you can tell pretty easily who's doing it. But they were doing it with multiple characters in this. They were doing it without distinct voices. So I was as confused as AJ was at some point when they were doing that. Yeah, I completely agree there.
Yeah, and you figure some like an editor would catch on to that, And what was also curious was these short chapters. I mean, what was it, like 3 paragraphs next chapter, and I wasn't used to it. It didn't confuse me, but I've never seen them grouped this way.
Sometimes it works for a book. Now, Stephen Yule was the cover artist of those books. Jeff Vandermeer, who wrote South China Sea, Predator South China Sea, his book was until why am I blanking on his name? Phalanx. Who wrote Phalanx?
I think
Scott Siegler. Okay. So until Scott Siegler rolled around with Phalanx, South China Sea was probably the fattest of the Alien and Predator books, and he used a lot of very short chapters, but it kept things turning. It maintained a very steady, fast pace that kept you moving through the book. With this one, it just felt like it didn't really have much to say. It was like a couple of points he wanted to put out quickly, but for some reason, rather than make it a break within a different chapter, he made it a 2-page chapter, and it did feel not necessarily in service of the book, but
I think some of those chapters even took place in the same setting, in the same event, and I didn't quite understand it, and I don't know the literary description. It's just, if you wanted to split it up, you could have that little gap within the chapter and still stay within the chapter. The only way I found this useful is because I was struggling with the story. I could say, okay, I'm on this number. I could go have a beer, finish another chapter, have another beer, and try to keep track of where I was. But otherwise, yeah, it was really insane, this book.
It was a hard book to stick with in terms of just reading it through.
Yeah.
Like you said, AJ, you had to kind of like take breaks and come back to it. It was not like one of those books that we've had where it just pulls you in and you can't really turn away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the aforementioned Phalanx. I read through that.
Yeah, Phalanx.
I read through that
way
in 2
longer
days.
in this book, but it felt shorter.
Yeah, you want a book you can't put down, with interesting characters and so forth. And, maybe I can step aside to interesting characters. I know that Aaron said he kind of liked Attila in his second read.
Uh-huh.
That Attila the Hun, the robot android sidekick. For me, I will agree with Aaron at first. At first, I actually found him a bit charming. Early on in the novel, I actually found this is going to be one of the few positives I say about this book. I found a small portion of the story actually engaging when they lightly discussed freedom or bondage, freedom in bondage, and if Till was content as an individual always being in the service of Machiko. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm really actually enjoying this conversation, even though it was formatted in that strange format. But later, for me, he was just annoying. And when he became just the head, which I presume was supposed to be charming too. And well, let me stop right there. How long can an android survive without his head? I mean, is his body just supposed to be a method of transportation? Is that synthetic blood that it lost nothing more than aesthetics?
Well, I think the Covenant virals probably implied at least a few days, if not a week or so.
And I think Hunter's Planet did make a point of mentioning the internal batteries and stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of him having them in his head. Though it did make me laugh because I think there was a comment in there about how he'd survived getting his head shot off, exploded off his body. Good God, that whole sequence was hilarious. But one of the things that made me laugh is because I always say it, when it comes to building robots, you're not going to put the vital component in the head because it's an obvious place to shoot. I'd put it in the foot or something. So they think about something like Machiko thinks about something like that in the book when his head goes flying.
Yeah, but I was just thinking with his head that this head was like a Swiss Army knife. It shoots laser beams, and you could start a car with it. She put the head to the ignition, and somehow till his head was able to start the vehicle.
It was like Inspector Gadget. By the end
it was
of it.
Inspector Gadget. It was sharks with laser beams. It was. I was laughing and crying at the same time.
I can agree with that in terms of the ridiculous nature of how he was utilized as a plot device towards the end. But honest to God, it was just his dynamics with Machiko that really endeared me to him. I just enjoyed their banter and their discussions and stuff. And like even when he did become the Swiss Army knife of synthetics, the jib they were giving each other, I still continued to like him. I was like, yeah, I dig you. Okay. You deserve your body back at the end of this, because he was remote controlling his leg, his body as well. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Oh, it was so silly towards the end.
And I'm not trying to change your mind, but
no, don't get me wrong. I still enjoyed him overall, but like I think the last probably 70 or so pages when the book goes from thinking there's a mystery to saying what the mystery is and trying to do something with it. It takes the book's 250 pages long. It takes about 190 pages for stuff to actually start happening, and it's those last pages where I'm just like,
yeah. Well, and then in those last pages, right, with Attila, we later find out this android has been programmed with a secret agenda, programmed by this submersive alliance called the X Group, not the X-Men, the X Group, that were independent thinkers that do not agree with the company's policies and philosophies towards humankind. So this group, this X Group, is the first time Machiko is hearing about it. Yet she continues to trust this android head in this life or death assault against this Evanston stronghold. I mean, how does she know the X Group's agenda is pure? all she knows is this robot was assigned to her with programmed ulterior secret motives, and she just runs with it blindly.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did say that he was there to basically help her if she ran into trouble, and that's why the X group had placed him with her, which is kind of interesting. Is this idea of this subversive group working against, the big bad corporations? But even down to again, it felt like a kind of maybe not so tacked on, because they'd sort of hinted at his past throughout the book. It was a constant thread throughout, but I don't know. It's like with Evanston Moorland and all that kind of crap, where just this. I'm not going to burden you with their true name, Machiko. Let's just call them the X group. Where I was just like, does Bischoff really not like names? Here's another one that I noted down that I thought was horrendous. Cordial as a name.
What was that, a Marine? Cordial?
I can't remember who it was. I think it was one of the hunters group or the lawyers or something. But no, it wasn't. It was the chauffeur. It was the chauffeur Adam was talking about earlier, the concierge. So, yeah, I don't think names is Bischoff's thing. I'm going to be honest here.
Well, either it's just getting these characters down, because it's just, I wanted to have a little bit of mistrust. I mean, Attila had to explain, because Attila was doing these crazy feats, and Machiko was saying, what's going on? What the hell is going on with you? Well, where is this all coming from? So the fact that she's just going to blindly trust now that that this X group doesn't have necessarily nefarious, purpose behind them too. I don't know. It's just, that's why if this stuff kind of reads to me like a young adult novel. It's just questions that, normal human beings would be very suspicious and approach. She's like, okay, off we go. Assault the camp, assault the stronghold, and really, never have any sort of concern that normal humans would. And
so I feel kind of bad here, because David Bischoff actually passed away in 2018, as I just found out. But yeah, I don't think he would return to the franchise, because I just wanted to look up his other works. His books were Genocide and
Hunter's
Planet. But you said you liked Genocide.
Yeah,
right?
I really liked. From what I remember, it's been a couple of years, but I remember really liking Genocide. Thought it was a very interesting dive into the guy who ran the Grant Corporation that would become a relatively important one in the EU. That was the book and the corporation that set off the whole Royal Jelly thing, which was Black Goo version 1 in terms of plot devices.
He wrote a number of other science fiction novels, adaptation of Gremlins: The New Batch. Let's see here.
I don't know if
I guess.
Say again.
Some Star Trek novels as well, some Sequest novels, just some various.
Yeah, he wrote a couple of Star Trek episodes as well, from what I remember.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm curious what those are, because
First Contact was one that I remember, not the film, the episode, the Next Gen episode. I can't remember the other one. And
maybe he improved as a writer, and maybe this...
well, he taught literacy at university.
Well, that's different. But as I was talking with Attila and how Machiko would respond to this kind of news, it just so many times it just didn't feel authentic. The dialogue didn't feel authentic.
It feels like a quickly put together work for hire is what this feels like.
And even really good writers have books that are just jobs, or books that end up being duds.
It just didn't feel true to the situation. And I think, I think as writers grow, young writers fall into this trap where they just don't know how humans talk, but instead they'll write some quips that their young minds would think is so cool. But later as an adult, they'd go back to those younger writings and remark, ooh, this is bad, this is awful, and to me, this felt like young writing that I was reading. Like when Machiko and Sanchez, crash their car into the compound doors, and it's the assault. It's the finale of the story, and they're in a rush, and their adrenaline is pumping, and they're in a siege. She stops and she says, "Oh, I used to wreck cars all the time. I'm real good at it. Too bad I don't have insurance now." End quote. Yeah. Come on, this is high stakes. Too bad I don't have insurance. She's making a dumb little quip in this life or death situation. She's trying. I don't know. Maybe at age 13, I would love this. I don't mean to be so harsh. But even like the villain Evanston, right? He says, "Welcome to my lovely trap." That was a quote, end quote, before the trap was even sprung. It was over the PA system. And I'm like, oh, I know I got to finish this book. It's so hard.
the one book that we ask AJ to read for the podcast, and it's this thing.
Oh, well, I did read Stalking Shadows.
Oh, yes.
To its credit, Stalking Shadows was a lot better written than this. So even though I had...
Aaron, did you ever do a podcast on South China Sea?
No,
because that's something we got to do, because I still have never read that book, and you say it's the best Predator book of all time. So,
well, AJ, do you have £500 to spend? $500?
I actually have South China Sea. I also have, what seems to be more expensive than that? Turnabout, which I have as well.
As do I, yeah.
Yeah.
Turnabout. So. They are both the best Predator novels. Turnabout and South China Sea.
And this one...
It's not.
I don't want to kill. I don't want to kill it, And be honest with you, if you guys told me this was a junior novel, maybe I'd praise it. But
let's be fair here, because Echo,
awesome.
Echo is a hell of a lot better than this. The only thing with Echo was I don't know if I would have been quite as horny as she was during those life or death situations. But other than that, I thought Echo was really good.
Yeah. Did you guys even understand that love connection between Ned Sanchez and Machiko? I mean, I read it and I was like, if you guys remember, the attraction was explained this way, that Ned was telling her this brief story. He was like, yeah, I'm just going to call him Joe. And Joe and me, we killed bugs. And we went into a hive and we made a mistake.
Oh, man.
Joe didn't come out. I did. But it shouldn't have been me. And Machiko responded, and I have this quote here. Machiko responded, "So you're not doing this for money. That's why I'm attracted to you." End quote. That is an actual real quote. God. Okay. And then, so that's why you're hot. Let's bang. We're not doing this for money. I mean,
I'm pretty sure the whole survivor's guilt thing was mentioned in this, though, in terms of her having the same guilt from making it out of Ryushi and him.
Her guilt was a little more expanded, but Ned's was not. Yeah. He even said, "I'm just going to tell you a brief story," And
even just that surface level connection between the survivor's guilt for both of them, I kind of liked. But in general, I do agree with you. Pretty much everybody in this is paper thin. The relationships are paper thin. There's inklings of good, perhaps, ideas there. But yeah, again, it felt like a quick work for hire.
It was pretty strange at the end too, when the Predators just board Evanston's ship and walk out with his head. I'm like, yeah, I know he was the evil guy who was in charge of this whole thing, but that still doesn't seem like honorable combat. I can't imagine he put up much of a fight in that situation.
I think they've sort of thrown that out. They adapt issue. We've said they adapt issue 0 in this, and that. The point of issue 0 of war was this isn't a hunt. This is a war. There's a whole other set of rules going off here. And I think that was kind of I can't remember if it was explicitly stated or not, but that was, I believe, the intention behind the whole assault on the cloning
the snake, as it were.
Because they wanted the guy that was responsible for the Xenoborgs, the buggers. They thought they were an abomination, and they wanted the guy responsible for it. So, different rule set.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
And come on in. How did this this book and poor alien fans that have to read it, you know.
There's no real aliens in this book.
No.
That was something 17-year-old me fucking hated, and it was something 30-year-old me, 31-year-old me was like, I've read worse. I've read worse.
And you didn't even get one real xenomorph. You know, you got the buggers. And remember, guys, that's quote unquote the buggers. And now you didn't
have one regular xenomorph, not even the one that bursted out of.
No, well,
I suppose that was.
That's a chest burster. But hey, let's talk about that scene for a second, okay? All these guys and Machiko are xenomorph experts. They've all dealt with them. They know their life cycles. You know, even Evanston understands it, okay? And then lo and behold, when this whole hunting party is killed, except Brookings, you know, that her best lawyer, his best lawyer friend, I think her name was Petra, was suddenly found, and she's alive, but she has no memory and she has chest discomfort, and everyone's standing around and no one ever thinks to even scan her for a possible chest burster, even though every single person in the room are xenomorph experts, have dealt with them, have killed them. It is so moronic to me that I'm screaming at the book, guys. Get her scanned. You know, she might have a chest burster inside, and of course, you know, the chest burster explodes, and we're supposed to be shocked as a reader, and we're not.
But do we ever see that alien like as an adult, or does it just scuttle off and that's the last?
Michiko kills it.
It gets shot.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So it was so ridiculous.
It was a very poorly written sequence. Yes, you know, there's something to be said about trying to leave hints for your reader and then making everybody else seem like idiots. So yes, completely agree. A little random point that I was kind of disappointed by was the fact that it made it seem like Machiko had never hunted anything other than aliens with the Predators, which it's only little, and at the end of the day the book's so inconsequential for me that it's like but you know, it was a little disappointment for me with this one.
Yeah, didn't it kind of allude to Earth War in the beginning? Because I think when Machiko was like talking about Earth, she's like, "Oh, before the humans and the bugs took it over, or whatever."
I don't remember because I don't think the AVP. No, because I think AVP is set before Earth War.
Oh, is it?
Or at least the original one is, because I think the original one was just around the time of Alien.
And to
I could have sworn there was sorry, AJ, I could have sworn there was a part early on in the book where she talks about, this planet is what Earth must have been like before the humans and the bugs like did their thing on it or whatever. I remember that thing in the book.
Maybe.
And we should revise her statement or correct her statement. There was real xenomorphs and a queen in the beginning of the book in a flashback.
Oh, that's right.
In the issue 0 with adaptation, yeah.
Yeah.
So
here's a question for you real quick, Aaron. When was the last time you read War?
The book or the comic?
The book.
A couple of years ago, maybe. It wasn't so long ago, but it's not recent.
And I'm going to assume you remember it being a better book than this.
Yeah. I mean, the War novel, I think, is one of the shorter ones. And again, I do feel that was a little bit work for hire. I don't remember it really expanding terribly much. But it was only SD Perry who did War, Stephanie, and she's always, you know, a good, reliable author.
Yeah. So I think it would be interesting to read like back to back, because this book and that book have adaptations of the same scene, that Dark Horse issue 0 of War, and just to compare how it reads with War and this for that exact same scene. I might do that because that'd be kind of an interesting exercise.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, you brought up the Predators, Aaron, and I will, you know, give credits where I can find it. Again, I don't like how the Predators were presented mostly through the book, and they were too chatty, and I agree it was too Klingon-ish. But there was a scene I actually did enjoy where Michiko had to appeal to the Predators about the buggers in a plea for help and assistance. And the predators initially thought it was a trick, and Shorty appeared just in time to label her as a traitor. And Machika called for a challenge just in time before they killed them. And that contest was an entertaining read. The dialogue was minimal, which I really liked. That's how I like my predators. And I just like that contest. I like how Machiko called out first blood. I thought that was like a thrilling moment. And I enjoyed how the predator system was described by Bischoff. That if someone threw down the gauntlet, it had to be picked up. That was the predator code. Courage had to be met with courage. That life wasn't as important as a being brave in death. And that was a small little piece that I actually really enjoyed, and I wish it was more of that. That it was that it consisted of minimal dialogue, and we were just taught as these predators interacted, and through the eyes of Machiko, versus actually getting to hear them speak about the umans, and the hard meat and the soft meat and the dark meat and the white meat. I'm all ready for turkey. But I did enjoy that little snippet.
I think it expands reasonably well on how Perry had set them up in the first book. I can't remember how much of that is just like directly taken from how he handled scenes in Prey. So I'd be quite interested for you to go and read Prey and War and sort of come back with how you feel about the Yautja after that.
Well, sometimes, I mean, I've let me see. I think in what was the If It Bleeds, we got to see I think it was it Perry's sequel to Turnabout? Yes. And we got to hear the perspective of the predator, and I actually enjoyed that. It was just really well done. And same thing with the Predator 2 novelization. And so sometimes it could really work well. It just, as you were saying, it came off like too much like Klingons here, versus I think they were just too wordy for me. And
it really depends on the person that you're reading and the approach they take.
Yeah.
The Predator 2 novelization does it really well. And South China Sea does it really well. Turnabout is actually quite minimal. I don't think it even comes up at all in Turnabout, actually.
But it was the sequel to Turnabout.
Yeah, but the sequel to Turnabout does do it.
Yeah.
But the ones that do it like the Predator 2 novel, the ones that do it like South China Sea, are the ones I prefer. I don't like getting too far into them, or maybe it's just because I don't like Perry's Klingon-esque version of them. But so that whole thing in this, I kind of like roll my eyes at, even in Hunter's Planet.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys can tell, I didn't really enjoy this book.
I noticed. So, one final point of discussion then. I just want to know what you guys thought of, name aside, the buggers and the concept of the Xenoborg in this.
Aaron, I think you and I are probably more on board with this concept than AJ, because we have the context of AVP 1 by Rebellion on PC, because I'll always remember playing that game and just seeing the Xenoborg hunched over and then having it come up, and then the targeting lasers are active. And it was such a cool scene in that game that it really kind of brought me on board with that concept. And of course you have Jerry in the comics, and I thought that character was cool. Here it just seemed like they were less synthetic aliens, kind of like they were presented there, and more just aliens being controlled through cybernetic means. And I don't think it worked as well here, not at all. And it seems like you really do not like that concept, AJ, right?
Yeah, it's interesting with me. When I read a book, I picture it like a film. I don't do it with comics, but I visualize it in my head. And some things work in comics that don't work on film and don't work on screen. And I think this is one of them. We could equate that to maybe The Newborn. I know I'm going to piss people off with that. Or let's say,
I mean, nobody likes The Newborn.
Okay,
you're fine.
Okay, or
no, nobody likes The Newborn.
Or the upgrade Predator, right? When it's 11 feet tall and what was he, 250 pounds? I mean, it just gets a little ridiculous. It feels like it's a stretch. It's it's that genetic upgrade, the bigger, badder, scarier, and that just never seems to be the right way to go. I mean, maybe there's some examples out there, but it just feels like it feels like bad writing. It feels like they're taking the position of Ridley Scott that the beast is cooked, and you got to modify it to make it interesting. And clearly, I don't think you need to do that. I just think the writing around it, the characters around it, and the story around it has to be interesting. And this just feels like a cheap way to give you oohs and ahs. I know that prologue was supposed to be like a stunner. It was supposed to be a Batman v Superman Martha moment where everyone's supposed to gasp. Because they're hiding that little gun.
I thought it was eye rolls at the Martha scene.
Well, and that's my point. Ultimately, I think the eye rolls win in that scene. When you read that prologue and he whips out the gun, I gotta believe that David Bischoff was saying, "Man, people are going to be like, wow, and stunned." But I think it just generates mostly eye rolls and cringes, and they're they're not looking for cybernetic xenomorphs, and it's just a ploy that I just can't stand. It's and maybe it could be handled really well, and I've just yet to see it, but it wasn't handled well here. And they're called the Buggers. I mean, how do you take them seriously? Look, everyone, run! It's the Buggers.
To be fair, Halo also had buggers, and they were very good in Halo.
Okay, I know you're a big Halo fan.
I'm a very big Halo fan. Yes. So I like them as a concept, and again, going back to what RidgeTop said, it's because of AVP Classic, AVP Gold, AVP 99, Rebellion's first AVP on the PC. So as a concept,
they belong in a video game. That's great. That kind of stuff is video game gold.
I still give the books that kind of leeway. I give the books and the comics that kind of leeway.
Yeah, you can try different things in the books that you wouldn't normally see in the films, but I just don't think it was effective here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the concept. I like how it's been handled in the games. In this, it was just so wishy-washy. Even Bischoff didn't seem to know what was truly happening with them when he was trying to describe their development and what they were doing. And they were ineffectual within the narrative of the book as well. Because he was remote controlling them on his Xbox what would it have been in 1994? Sega Mega Drive? He was controlling them on his Sega Mega Drive controller and being shit at it. And there was some ridiculous imagery in there as well. Some of the enhancements that he was describing were multiple limbs, robotic limbs carrying other weapons and stuff like that. And I was rolling my eyes. I was. So
I couldn't figure out why it shorted out. I mean, I would love if this guy was like a coffee drinker and he's always with the coffee. He's always with the coffee. And then when he's in that control room, he finally accidentally knocks the coffee and the coffee is his undoing. I mean, that would at least be creative. I don't even know why this thing is shorted out.
I can't remember either, to be honest. So it was those last 70 pages were just so poor for me. And yeah, the Xenoborgs, the buggers in this, I was not a fan of. It was wasted. It was a wasted thing. The only real redeeming thing of this book for me was Attila, and that was it. But it didn't, as I said earlier, it didn't offend me. It was just meh.
Yeah, I just didn't have a good time reading this book. I wish I did. From the thin characters to the thin writing to the ridiculous dialogue, I was just disengaged every step of the way. And there was a part there I liked. Yes, go ahead, Aaron.
was going to say that's absolutely fair, mate. You know, at the end of the day, after I've finished writing up my little thing about the Xenoborgs and the buggers, this is going back on bookshelf and it's not getting pulled out for another 10 years. I will stick with I'll stick with War and I'll stick with 3 World War for my Michiko story.
If anyone wants a signed copy by Voodoo Magic, you can find this copy on eBay right after this podcast. No, I mean I'm not gonna remove it from my collection. But I don't, yeah.
We won't be rereading it anytime soon.
That's
yeah,
fair.
yeah.
Okay, are we done with Hunter's Planet?
I think we're done with it. Sorry for the negative one, guys. They happen.
But as long as it's entertainingly negative, you know.
And you know what? I think if you have a 13-year-old, I'm being honest here, if you have a 13-year-old, 12-year-old that's interested in reading an Alien versus Predator book, this book might be the book for them. I mean, they might have a good time with it. They're not looking for the real and deep characterizations. And, you know, if they're looking for something popcorn, it might be fun. And it might be something, there is a little hanky-panky, but I don't think it gets descriptive, if I recall, right? We just...
No.
They start kissing, and then
it's Perry who was obsessed with sex.
Yeah. So this might be actually a good novel for them, just to start out. You know.
Yeah, I loved this book when I was a teenager. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
I wish I liked it as much when I reread it.
But you like Echo more?
Yes,
as a teenager.
I like Echo much more as a teenage book, and as an adult, reading a teenage book. Yeah,
yes,
so
exactly. Cool. Well. With that portion of the podcast done for our video viewers, is anybody else got something to show and tell? Am I the only one?
I think you're the only one.
Yeah, I couldn't muster up the energy for a shirt today.
I am so disappointed.
For anyone listening to the podcast,
but
Adam is naked.
Aaron's got a good shirt, so his will make up for our lack of.
This was done for you, pair. You AVP are disgusting lovers. So when AVPR came out, it was in America. It was a Christmas release, and they did some midnight showings on Christmas Eve. So this was one of the shirts given out somewhere. I survived at Midnight Massacre Christmas Eve 2007.
Even though you didn't, I didn't watch it a few months later. EVPR. I love how they do the red and green too. Yeah. That's funny.
So you can't really see it, but there's the circular pattern of the image of them hugging around the earth.
Yeah, it's kind of faint there, but I see it.
Yeah, so I didn't survive the Midnight Massacre. I'm pretty sure Fox PR sent me this shirt back in the day, and this is the first time I've ever worn it. I put it on, wondering if I would still. If this, this gut would still fit in a shirt that I gave an estimated size for when I was 18 or 19. Well,
congratulations.
It fits, but you can see the baby. You can see the baby in profile. So.
I'm surprised your shirt doesn't say "I survived this film," knowing how you feel about AVP Requiem.
Well, I do have another shirt where it is that. That globe, them hanging around it. That I like the imagery, and I like the imagery.
That was a cool poster. Come on,
Japanese poster as well. Yeah. The Japanese poster is phenomenal.
Both of them are great.
But even the Predator, I really like the skull poster, the one hanging up there, and I really like the infrared one that they did as well. So even the bad films, there's generally some imagery that I genuinely like. In terms of posterage.
Yeah. I actually enjoy that one poster. I don't like the skull one, but I do like the infrared.
No, even the one where it's the bigger batter holding Fugitive's head. Like I thought when we first saw that, we were like, "Whoa, that's cool. That's kind of comic booky." Like we were digging it.
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to say, guys, since this is the last podcast of 2020, and I just want to say that 2020 obviously has been a real tragic year for everyone, and there really hasn't been much highlights overall to speak of. And I know we all wish the best of health to everyone out there. Now, one good thing for me personally was being able to join this team, this AVP staff. So I would just like to thank Darkness, Eric. I hope you're listening. Adam, and especially Aaron, who sometimes I think believes more in me than I do, for allowing me to join this family. And that goes to this community too. You know, we have the best community out there. They were so supportive, bonded together, even brought together several couples. So just thanks to everyone, you know, especially Aaron again, that works like a machine to provide a great escapism in such a rough time where we need it, you know. So thank you all, and let's hope 2021 is a much better year.
100% on that one, yes.
And yes, it's been great to have you on board, Voodoo, and even just to play some rounds in Hunting Grounds and Apex and Warzone, which is, I think we got to know each other a little bit better with that. And no, you've been a great addition to the team, and we really appreciate all the work you've put into the site this year. And we really appreciate our listeners and viewers to this podcast as well. You know, it's the feedback and comments we sometimes get that keeps us motivated to do this. Now, I mean, we do just enjoy talking about it as well, but it definitely keeps us motivated to have the kind of feedback that we get from our community, and the community that we've been a part of for a good long while now. And, you know, I'm hoping, it seems with all the recent news we've had lately, that 2021 is hopefully going to be a much more enjoyable year beyond just Alien and Predator goodness, but we should have plenty of that as well. So
indeed. And AJ getting all gushy there, you know, I started blushing, I think. So you know, and that's something else. You know, the viewers and the listeners have also commented on your addition to the team, and they really like you. So we'll keep you around. We'll keep you around for a little bit more.
I appreciate it, guys.
No worries. And you know, again, like Adam said, the feedback we do get does mean a lot to us. At the end of the day, we are doing this because we're a bunch of nerds that enjoy talking to each other. But for some reason, you people out there also seem to like it and are interested in our opinions, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate hearing back from you. I especially appreciate it because these guys, all they have to do is read and talk. I have to anally retentively go through the editing process and particularly the audio. So I do like to hear, you know, that it is appreciated and stuff like that. Especially some of the comments that we had this year. Of people picking up on stuff like that, you know, simple things like pauses edited out of interviews and sending our guests questions so that they can brush up beforehand, so it's not a pause in the middle of an interview. So I've seen comments like that have been picked up, and I do appreciate it. If you are listening on like iTunes or Spotify or PodBean or whatever, it would be helpful if people could leave reviews and ratings. You know, that helps our visibility in terms of other people seeing us. And it's not something I've ever really shilled on before. You know, I don't tend to enjoy the shilling. But, you know, if you are enjoying the show, please do leave us a rating. Please do leave us reviews and comments on the, you know, on the podcasts, on the posts, on YouTube, you know. So yeah, very much appreciated, and thank you everybody who has been listening. I hope everybody's enjoyed this year, because I think we've put out some good content this year. You know, some good interviews. Charles on the assembly cut. You know, Wyatt. I don't know why I thought Brian there. You know, Wyatt
Reed was a great conversation. Yeah,
Mark Verheyden, and I'm sure there's others as well. But you know, I want to mention that we're going to be kicking off 2021 with a fucking good one as well. You know, we got Stephen Hopkins. We actually got him. You know, we mentioned it in the Predator 2 episode that I'd gone through everybody trying to find, you know, somebody to talk to with Predator 2, and we've finally got him. We got Stephen Hopkins, and he will be the first episode of 2021. So I don't plan on giving you a shit 2021 either. You know, I plan on getting some good stuff out there. And as well as that, you know, Adam and I did an interview with Jeremy Barlow, who wrote Thicker Than Blood, which is
also a really good conversation. And Aaron and I love that comic
absolutely
as well.
love that comic. So that'll be a fun one. I think AJ wasn't too keen on it, but you know, me and Adam's positivity will wear him down when we do that review episode. So there's plenty of stuff coming up. Don't you?
It was better than his book.
Yeah. Top 3 comics, AVP.
I will say, having enjoyed this book in my youth, it was still somewhat fun and nostalgic to go back and revisit it, even though it was not nearly as much fun as I remember. But no, this podcast and talking about this stuff and, you know, being excited for the stuff as we are in normal times, but especially this year, I think has really just helped us kind of get through things, you know. But we're hoping next year there's a lot of stuff on the horizon, and we're going to do our best to have the greatest podcast lineup that we've ever had, hopefully. So,
well, Adam, where can people find us if they want to check out the other areas? And it's not just a podcast.
Our main website is avpgalaxy.net. And we have a message board there if you want to engage with our community in conversation about the franchise, all aspects of the franchise, the comics, the books, the movies, and games. We also are on all the major socials on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. If you just search Alien vs. Predator Galaxy or AVP Galaxy, you're sure to find us.
And if you want to follow me personally, I am on Twitter as @_Corporal Hicks, and that's Alien, Predator, Halo, Stargate, Star Trek, Airsoft, just all the generally nerdy bollocks that I'm into.
If you'd like to follow me personally, it's @RidgeTop21 on both Instagram and Twitter.
And if you'd like to follow me, I'm at FN Voodoo Magic, FN Voodoo Magic on Twitter.
It'll never get old. It'll never get old.
FN Voodoo Magic, man.
Voodoo Magic.
I'm not even going to attempt. So, this has been Corporal Hicks.
And RidgeTop.
And Voodoo Magic. And
I've just realized we never came up with an end for an AVP.
Yeah,
episode.
we never did. We got to come up with an AVP ending. What are we going to do?
Whoever wins.
Oh, damn it. That was where I was going. I was going.
And whoever wins, we win. No, we can't do that one.
When it comes to Hunter's Planet, whoever wins, we lose.
Or we could do, but this isn't for our world, is it, Mr. Utami?
No, we've got it. That's the end of it. We're done.
Are you looking at me or the clock?
There we go. That works too.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Goodbye.